Hey everybody, welcome to this week's edition of This Woman Can. I am your host, as ever, Janice Sutherland, career strategist for the women of colour over 40. So we're continuing to have these really interesting conversations, and I hope you find them as interesting as I do. But this is probably a first for me, and you'll see why once I give Crystal's biography. So Crystal Ellington is the Communications Director for Minority Veterans of America, an organization aiming to change the narrative of the American veteran by providing community, advocacy, and policy change for LGBTQ+, veterans, women veterans, vets of colour, and veterans of non-religious minorities. In her current role, Crystal has utilised her lived experience as a minority veteran to open dialogue around the various intersections that many veterans and service members find themselves in. In 2021, Minority Vets hosted several speaker series around race, from the legacy and struggles surrounding the celebration of Juneteenth to the discrimination of racial and ethnic minorities faced during and after service. Prior to Minority Vets, Crystal was a combat veteran, serving a tour in Iraq in 2019. She retired from her army service as Special Operations Helicopter Mechanic in 2021. She's a graduate of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University with a degree in communications. Crystal, welcome to This Woman Can.
I'm so glad to be here, Janice. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Now, you have such many lived experiences. You're not the first engineer I've interviewed, or maybe you are, I don't know, but you're definitely the first veteran that I've interviewed that I'm aware of. So, Crystal, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, wow. So my journey has not exactly been the straightest road. So graduated in 2012 with my degree in aviation communications. At the time, I was also pursuing a professional track and field career. I went to Olympic trials in 2012 as well. So I think that having that discipline and having that background, as well as having family members that were in the military as well, is really what drove me to that particular career decision. And then I also wanted to go back to school to work with my hands and be a mechanic, but aviation school is really expensive. So I was looking for ways to do that with as less money out of pocket as possible. And I had quite a few friends in my circle tell me about all of the benefits of the military and all of the great things about the armed forces. So that combined with my family legacy of service, it was a no-brainer for me.
Excellent, excellent. So why the fascination with aeronautics? That's the right word, isn't it?
Yes. So aeronautics and aviation is essentially the same thing. Aviation is just a lot easier to say.
Right.
So I've always been fascinated with aircraft and planes and flying. Like I always have had the fascination with like flight and flight dynamics and flight mechanics. And I've always been very good with my hands. When I was growing up, I was the designated in-house person that put things together, whether it was a vacuum or a computer or setting up the Wi-Fi. I was wearing many hats as a child. So I think that affinity for seeing how things work really extended in my adult life.
Okay, so then you left the army. So tell us a bit about that transition. Was it smooth sailing coming out, making that change, or maybe what prompted that change? Tell us a little bit about what the drive was behind that.
So I was medically retired from the military. And that's a whole nother conversation, but okay. I had a few issues with PTSD, and it's very common, especially among Black women veterans in the military. It's just not as visible. And I think a lot of people don't understand that a lot of Black women, we do hurt. We're not just the strong ones all the time. Exactly. So getting out of the military was not exactly the easiest transition. I think that I had a little bit better of an experience because I knew it was coming. A lot of people don't set themselves up for success, and they don't use their networks to really pursue their passions after the military, because it becomes so much of a part of you, your service, I mean, and a lot of people don't know how to pivot once they leave the military. So I really dove right in as soon as I found out that I was being retired, and extended, requests to my network, like, hey, how can I break into the industry? I really want to stay in aviation and or communications. But it was really interesting because after I reached out to folks and really got feedback, I understood that aviation really wasn't my calling. And helping people, yes, after the degree and all the things, I found out that helping people and really bringing a voice to those who have been systemically marginalized and have not really had the opportunity to voice the issues surrounding veterans, especially veterans of color, women veterans, et cetera. So this really became my intersection of my purpose and my passion.
Yeah.
So.
And so many things you said there. The one thing that I come across, especially when I work with Black women, is the fact that we actually we almost allow our role or our title to define who we are. And when we don't have that, because we've worked so hard to aspire to a particular title, level, position, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot that comes with that. Sometimes, depending on your role, it could be prestige. It could be that I also find quite often is that women have gone into roles that's expected of them by family members sometimes, because, this is why you see so many scientists or doctors, lawyers, because it's what our family wants. We make our family look good. It's not necessarily what drives us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing you said there was that realizing that your passion, what you thought was your passion, isn't actually your passion. So tell me a little bit about, or tell our audience about a little bit, when you realized that, what was going through your head?
So I think that it was a light bulb moment for me once I actually received the paperwork in hand that I was out of the military. Yeah. And it really dawned on me that I had the freedom to pursue whatever I wanted. I could transition into whatever career I liked. Yeah. And that was also simultaneously very scary because I didn't know where to start. And I think that one of the reasons why I was so interested in your show is because, being older, you're not in your 20s anymore. Yes. You don't have all the time in the world to figure things out. You have responsibilities, you got bills. Yeah. So it was extremely terrifying for me to pivot into what I felt like was an entirely different world. Yeah. And the only way to really understand how to pivot was to do it. Yeah. And I couldn't be scared and I couldn't take my time and, maybe if I have this, accolade or this certification, because I never would have changed anything.
Yeah.
So
I love to hear you say that, because quite often, again, what I find is that we believe that another qualification, another accreditation will give us what we want. But in fact, what you haven't done is actually define what you want. So when I'm speaking to women and I say to them, well, what do you want to do next? Well, I'm just taking my MA because I'm like, but you don't know where you want to go. So how are you spending all that money on additional qualifications when you do not have a clear plan or path to pursue? So all you're doing, and for me, all that actually does, what I see, is that it's little procrastination, because it is scary. It is making that move. But if I delay a little bit and I'm doing something that will make me feel okay about the delay, then it's going to be okay. Yeah,
absolutely. I can 100% agree with that. And I actually went to law school for a few years, and going back to your point, it was what was expected of me. Yeah. It was what my family wanted. And at the time I was 24. Yeah. So I really thought that, oh my gosh, this is so prestigious. I'm going to be an attorney, all these things. And then once I actually got into law school and I was reading 60 hours a week, and I also had to commute an hour back and forth to class, and classes at night, I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful. There's no work-life balance here. I don't want to do this. Yeah. But I never would have known had I not put myself in that situation. Yeah. And I also really value, as we get older, we really understand what our boundaries are and what our limits are. Well,
Yes.
ideally we do.
Yeah.
And my boundary is I need sleep. I love sleeping. It's one of my favorite pastimes. If there is an activity that impedes on that, I don't want it.
Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous.
So, yeah.
So you've made a number of transitions there, which is great. And it's natural, but you've also made, most people make, or quite a few people make transitions from maybe role to role, but in the same industry or the same vein of what they're doing. You've gone wholeheartedly, wholesale, actually changing, doing complete pivots, you know, from lawyer to, I've got to say the word now, aviation.
There it is.
To now be minority vets. So what do you think, what has been the best thing, Crystal, about having your mid-career change?
Well, mainly the best thing has been the freedom, and it also gave me agency to realize what I want in my life and how to speak up about it.
Yeah.
I think that having the courage and the boldness to pivot, whether it's, like you said, from role to role, if it's a lateral transition or it's something that is completely in a different industry. I think as Black women, we have to give ourselves the space and the grace to really advocate for ourselves and understand that that's not a bad thing. Speaking up about what you want, and sometimes not going with the flow is the best thing that you can do for yourself.
Absolutely. And I love to hear that, because we have to be more open about these careers. And I think as women, some things you said there, well, as women, what I find, again, whether you have families or not, you're always the bottom of the rung. You put yourself at the bottom of the ladder, because everybody else's needs come before yours. But we need to have a good conversation with ourselves about what we want. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
So we've talked about your change. We've talked about the pivots. Now, I know you're in a situation for this last transition where you kind of had to make the change, but what did you fear the most about going through that process?
To be completely candid, I was scared I would not be able to find a job because I encounter quite a few veterans, especially women veterans, that take positions that are decidedly below their experience level to say that they have something. And I was not prepared to do that. I was not prepared to come in at entry level. I'm like, I have put myself through all this stuff. I need a position that is an accurate description and depiction of my capabilities and my skills. And that's another thing about really having that agency for yourself, is understanding what you will not tolerate.
Absolutely. Your non-negotiables.
Yes, definitely. Because I mean, if you don't set any boundaries, then you'll just say yes to anything. And who does that help really at the end of the day?
Yeah, thank you. So Crystal, what would you have said was the most difficult part of your last transition?
I think it was certainly the unknown. And I am very much a type A OCD person, where I have a contingency plan for my contingency plan, and having to put all of my eggs in one basket, which was minority vets, because I wanted to stand behind this mission so much. And it was so much a part of who I am. I understood that this is what I want. This is what I'm going after. And it was terrifying, because there's always that imposter syndrome. Like, what if I don't have the skills? What if I'm not enough? How do I show them that I do have the capabilities to do this job? And that's something also that I've really struggled with in my transition, is imposter syndrome. And I had a chat with my mentor, Onika Jefferson Cornelius, and she would tell me that you have to understand that you are enough without doing anything. They hired you, they understand you have the skills or can attain those skills. So you have to take up that space, be a mountain, take up that space.
And I think what women also need to realize is that no organization employs you to be a failure. That's not the goal. That is not the goal. You know, they employ you because they can see and they believe that you can deliver the objectives they want for that role. So, you know, so we have to get over the fact, this imposter syndrome, because somebody sees in us what we sometimes can't see in ourselves.
Yes,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Once I interviewed for this role and I understood that there were over 200 candidates, a lot of them were in previous director roles. And little old me, I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm gonna try.
Excellent.
So, the rest is history.
Excellent, excellent. So, Crystal, share with us one of your biggest challenges and the lessons you've learned and how you overcame it.
So I would say one of my biggest challenges recently is dealing with the emotional trauma and vicarious trauma of my role. There is a lot of storytelling involved in what I do, and people tell their stories of sexual trauma, of racism, of discrimination, and those types of things can become very, very heavy. And the challenging part for me was I would have these feelings of feeling overwhelmed and I didn't know why.
Right.
And I really had to sit down and understand I am absorbing all of this energy from this story that these people have overcome and that are re-traumatizing them every time they tell the story. And I think the challenging part for me in that was putting my mental health first. Speaking exactly to what you said, we often put ourselves on the bottom rung and having to realize that I need to step away for a bit because this is really heavy. I need to process it. Doing that was one of the biggest challenges of my current role and continues to be, but it's so worth it.
Excellent, excellent. So let me just flip the script on that then. We talked about challenges and successes, but how has failure made a positive difference in your life? People often see it as a negative, but I always have a different viewpoint on it.
I mean, I think especially in all of the transitions and all of the experiences that I've had, failure is a completely necessary part of the process because it allows you to see where your improvements lie. And I never think of failure as a negative thing, as you said. I think of it as a learning process, and there are no mistakes, only redirections.
Absolutely. Love that. Love that. So if you had to start over from scratch, knowing what you know now, then Crystal, what would you do differently?
Well, first of all, I'd go directly into the military so I wouldn't have student loans, first and foremost, because no one wants the student loans. And I would also definitely stand up for myself more. I would understand that being in spaces where sometimes I am the only Black woman, that is not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of times it can be a position of power because you have the power to change people's minds and their thought processes about what it means to be Black or what it means to be a woman, because some people don't really get those genuine stories from people in our positions. And it's absolutely necessary because it allows folks to change how they feel in terms of being discriminatory or prejudiced. So
fabulous. Love that. Love that answer.
That's one thing I'd change.
Excellent. Love that answer. And it's great that you were aware of that. So that's great. So what advice would you share with women who are embarking on their own career change, career pivot?
I would definitely say, be scared. It's going to happen. Just embrace that fear because there's always going to be the unknown. There's always going to be a semblance of making a mistake and the fear of failing. But I also think that it's super important for women, especially that are in mid-careers or senior careers, to understand that you don't have to stay somewhere where you're not appreciated. You don't have to stay somewhere where you're unhappy. There's always someone else that is going to see your value and someone else that is going to ensure that you are successful. Just like on this podcast, you are reaching out to women in your audience that are looking for ways to break into another industry and are just looking for a sign that it's okay to make a change. Well, sis, this is your sign. And you absolutely have everything you need already in your arsenal to be successful.
And I had a very similar conversation on exactly the same thing. this week in another interview. And it's about embracing, knowing you have all the strength, all the power, you have everything you need. Another qualification, another conversation. You don't need it. You didn't get where you are today without having the strength to do it.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that.
Yeah. So what do you think holds women back from going for their goals, Crystal?
I think a lot of times, especially with women that are mothers or caretakers, they are afraid to take risks, even calculated risks, because it's not just them. It doesn't just fall on them if there's a mistake made. So I really applaud women that are in their mid and senior careers that have the courage to pivot into another role, because it is terrifying to have someone else depend on you. And you make a mistake. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's 10 times worse, because now I have to be accountable to everybody else that I'm taking care of. And I also think that there's that level of comfort, that comfort blanket, like, oh, I've been in this job for 20 years or 15 years. This is what I know how to do. And for people like me, I don't like being bad at things. I don't like having to start over and having to start at the beginning. So I think a lot of women just won't get started because they don't want to suck at it first.
But what I say to women, like mid-career women in their 40s, I usually just point out, I think I did a couple of posts about, if you're in your 40s, you probably have 15 to 20 years of career ahead of you. How do you like your career now? And that kind of puts together, can I see myself doing this from the 15, 20 years? Yes, I may be good at it. Yes, I may be comfortable, but it doesn't make me happy. It doesn't make me, I'm not passionate about it. And eventually what happens is that whatever you thought you were good at, comfortable, starts eroding at you. It starts eroding anything, and then it starts showing itself. And speaking from experience, you ignore it, but it starts showing itself in other ways. From your health, your mental health, your physical health. Even your relationships, because you're just not nice sometimes, because you're not happy, but you can't articulate that. So for me, having those conversations with people close to you, because again, we bottle it up. We think we can't come out of this because we're the main breadwinner, we're this, that, and the other. So we've got to stay we are. And in the meantime, while you're bottling that up, it's just nibbling away. It's just nibbling away everything that keeps you alive. So have the conversation, people. For the women, ladies, the person to do is have a conversation with those close to you to explain how you're feeling. So at least you have them on your side, because in the back of your head, you're thinking, they don't support me. Yet you've not given the opportunity to say to you, this is okay. We'll work this out together. So it's scary, but it's doable.
Definitely. And I think a lot of times when we don't have those conversations, we're taking away the capability of someone else to be helpful for us, or even even give us some guidance. So if we take away that choice or someone to help us, we're only hurting ourselves.
Excellent. Very, very, very true. Very, very true. So Crystal, what's your personal mantra or mission, and why?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I have a few. Personally, I completely live by the mantra that treat people the way you would like to be treated, because I think there's so many negative things in this world, and all it takes is to just be nice. You can be anything in this world, but just start with being nice. And then professionally, I think we've already touched on my personal mantras, is that there are no failures, only redirections. Because there have been quite a few experiences I've had within the military and after, where I thought that something was the end of my career. I thought that I'm never going to get past this. And it really ended up setting me up for something better.
Thank you for that. So I'd like to finish this sentence. My best advice for mid-career women is?
My best advice for mid-career women is to do the thing that scares you the most.
Yes. Love that. Absolutely love that. Love that. So, Crystal, coming down to our last couple of questions. What are the three things you've learned about us during your career? Sorry, you've learned about yourself, not us, yourself during your career.
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
What are the three things you've learned about yourself during your career?
Okay, I have learned first and foremost that I am a procrastinator. And it is something that I struggle with every single day because much of my life has been under pressure. And so I've really gotten used to putting myself in those situations where I need the pressure to perform.
Yeah.
And the older I get, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in a hurry. I don't want to be under pressure. So really having to make the realization of I need to-do lists, I need reminders, having to reframe my thinking in that way has just been a little bit of a challenge, but we're working on it. The second thing I've learned is that I have a really huge passion for helping people in whatever way that looks like. And there have been so many times in my life where I've wondered, what am I doing here? What is my purpose? You know, we all have those existential crises. But really being in an environment where I can bring my whole self to how I serve people. And I don't have to code switch. I don't have to have my hair a certain way. I don't have to present myself in what I feel like is the most palatable, excuse me. I can just be me and that's okay. And if people aren't okay with it, hit the door.
Excellent. So, Crystal, we got a third one, haven't you? Sorry, my mistake. Number 3.
Okay. And then the third one is I realized that networking is definitely the way to go for anything essentially that you would like to do, whether it's starting your own business or pivoting careers or essentially anything. Like you have to have a network of like-minded folks that are willing to set you up for success. And if they don't know the answer, they can introduce you to someone that has it. So networking is key.
Excellent. And I always love this question, almost to the end. But Crystal, what does success feel like to you?
Oh, so I actually asked myself this question at the beginning of the year when I was doing strategy for my own personal development. And success to me looks like work-life balance because I am the type of person I will work myself into a coma. And I don't want to do that. I feel like it's not helpful for the company because then I'm putting forth subpar work. And obviously it's not helpful for me because I'm not taking the time that I need to be the best version of myself that I can be. So
fabulous. So tell us before we start wrapping up, tell us a little bit more about Minority Vets, what's coming up, and also how people can get in touch with you if they want to know more.
This is my favorite part. Okay. So with Minority Vets, we are aimed mostly or not wholly at servicing minority veterans and marginalized veterans that have historically not had a voice. So vets of color, LGBTQ plus vets, vets that are ethnic and religious minorities. We advocate for those folks and ensure that they have the space in the community that they need to feel seen. And we also do policy and advocacy work, essentially trying to make sure that those folks have the resources and have the laws that are necessary for them to live their fullest, best lives. And so Minority Vets is doing a lot in the upcoming quarter. So in February, we had our Black History Month event, and it was focused specifically toward Black joy, because so many events in Black History Month are focused on strife and pain and slavery. And there is way more to Black history than just slavery. So we definitely wanted to, definitely expound on that. And then March, of course, is Women's History Month. And we are doing a visual campaign called #FierceAF. And we are focusing largely on women veterans who for lack of a better word, are badasses.
Yeah.
Women that are also not a monolith. They are moms and storytellers and
Mm.
visionaries, and they are also very, gentle and kind and sweet. And I just didn't want to focus on that trope that
Yeah.
women are, soft and kumbaya and sisterhood.
Yeah.
Like, no, women
I
do some
know.
pretty amazing things. So that campaign is coming up. And then we also have our Trans Day of Visibility that's on March 31st. We're starting a campaign with that called Transcending Hate. And it is largely focused around how folks can break the stigma and a lot of the misconceptions around the trans community. So that's what we have set up in March. We have a ton of things coming up in April and May as well. We'll be sending out our newsletter. Anybody can get signed onto our newsletter. Just go on our website and sign up. And we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter and LinkedIn at Minority Vets on all platforms.
And what's the website address?
The website is www.minorityvets.org.
Excellent. I'll put all the links. I'll make sure I put all the links in the show notes. But Crystal, that was my last question. You survived. You survived.
I know. Survived and flourished.
Excellent. So thank you so much for joining me this week. It was definitely a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for bringing me on, Janice. I really enjoyed myself, and I hope the women out there realize that they absolutely can.
Yeah, fierce AF or hashtag fierce AF.
Fierce AF.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.